This is a Kirkendall Barrett presentation. Well, hello, everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. It is time for another episode of the Reality Reading Rainbow, where we talk about books written by reality stars, especially Real Housewives, and try to make sense of them. I am Les Kirkendall Barrett, and I have my friend with me from Andrew's Lifestyle. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Les. How are you doing?
I'm good, and it has been a while since we've recorded, life has gotten busy, but it's all been good busy. I've been touring during my show, which, by the way, if it sounds weird and echoey, I'm actually not in my place in California. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am doing my show, The Real Black Swan, Confessions of America's First Black Drag Queen, at the Minnesota Fringe Festival. And so I am staying in this fabulous renovated warehouse loft style apartment in Minneapolis, and it is huge and the ceilings are high. So if I sound echoey, sorry. But I've been doing that. Before that, I was filming a web series called House Husbands with Bruce Valanche. So, and then, you have a life too, Andrew. So it's just been really hard to coordinate. So I'm glad that we finally are doing this, because we are talking about a brand new book. Full disclosure, I've only read a few chapters because, like I said, busy. But the book is called The Pursuit of Porsha by Porsha Williams. And you know what? My new motto for this podcast, and this includes you, Andrew, I read this shit so you don't have to.
Yeah. And I would just like to point out with Porsha for a second, she has made everything rhyme with P. Like, thank goodness her name was Porsha, and it wasn't like, I don't know, Azalea or something like that, or an I name, because she's got Pampered by Porsha, Pursuit with Porsha. She's got all of the P like that on like the sounding. I forgot what it's called. I feel so stupid at the moment, but not rhythm, not rhyme, something. Someone a 10th grade English teacher could probably tell me, but
So in the introduction, Porsha thinks very highly of herself.
Is it narcissistic? Maybe. Are people going to love it? Maybe. Do I think that it was beneficial to the book? Not at all.
But I do have to. So these were my feelings on Porsha while Porsha was on the show. And this is my opinion, and I've said this before, I talk Bravo with different people. My friend Dave Quinn, I love the name drop. My friend Dave Quinn, who wrote the New York Times bestseller, Not All Diamonds and Rosé. I've actually said this to him before. I think out of all of the housewives in housewife history, I think Porsha has got, she's technically no longer a housewife. She's, I guess, what would you call her? Like a housewife alumni, since she is going to be on the upcoming Real Housewives Girls Trip.
She had Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip, Portia's Family Matters, and then she was also in the Bravo chat room, and then I think she had another spinoff. I forget.
So I guess she'd be considered alumni right now, in a sense.
Yeah.
I think out of any housewife, though, I think Porsha has gone through the biggest evolution to where she was onto the show. as opposed to where she was when she left the show.
200, 265 days a year. Oh my God.
Right.
Love that woman.
But the fact that she was kind of like this meek sort of a house, she was an actual housewife when she came on the show. Yes. And her ex-husband was like this, he was an athlete. And he was, and you know, she was I don't know if I could, I'm trying to be careful using this word. She was kind of subservient to him.
No, absolutely. I think absolutely. I mean, also Cordell was an NFL quarterbacker. There's so much different with that. I think that, like, I hate to use this term and I am hesitant to use it, but basketball wives, like if you're familiar with like type of woman where it was just kind of like, you know, we kind of saw it very similar with Robin from Real Housewives of Potomac too at the beginning. I think that they're so in their shell and they're not living in their husband's shadow, but they're fearful of the industry because most of the time the women, when they get to a position with a man like that, they understand that like he could be, you know, the next Peyton Manning and very like beloved by fans and all that things, or, you know, a disc could slip and he'll be out for the entire season and then be sidelined and then never play again, and that will affect the rest of their life, you know.
Right. No, I agree. And you know, he was very controlling, and he definitely, you know, he was the head of that household. And you know, I remember her saying things like the girls I think they wanted to go to a strip club or something like that. And I remember her saying that she had to get permission from her husband, and Nene going, what the hell? So that's where she started to where she ended, where, you know, she was like a boss ass bitch. You know, when she left, she was in charge and no one was telling Porsha what to do or anything else. And, you know, she literally was a career woman when she left. And, you know, she had a hit. She was on that, I don't know if she's still on Dish Nation. I don't think she's on Dish Nation anymore. But she came into her own and had a career, a legit career in her own right, you know?
Exactly. It wasn't like, and she didn't launch, like, in my opinion, like Ramona Singer brands, if you know what I mean. Like,
right, exactly. Like she had a legitimate career.
And I think that also goes to show you the vitality of the Real Housewives of Atlanta for a second too. Right. And I think that she joined the right franchise at the right time, became beloved by fans, she to me wrote the housewife book on how to be a great, not a OG cast member, but a later edition cast member that, you know, you're in it for the long run, but you know, you're great there. You feel like one of the OGs because the way you just click. I think casting made the right decision. Also, I forget, I've seen him a lot. He's been making the podcast circuits. I forget his name. He was the OG producer of the Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Oh, Carlos King.
Yes, Carlos King.
I actually like I've listened to his interviews. He actually has a podcast himself, and I actually like him. He's actually funny.
He's very funny. He can stand his own. I can definitely see how he was not only a great producer, but he said a couple things about just Porsha that really, like, as I was preparing for this, I was like, wow, that really resonates. And he said, you know, Porsha to me was a great addition as a housewife. She not only brought it, but she had the ability to make petty feuds, season feuds, and things like that. But it wasn't terrible. And then, of course, you cannot talk about Porsha without the Candy and Phaedra storyline. He said, you know, and I think when everybody thinks about that for a second, I think that goes to show you how much power Porsha played as a housewife for a second.
And by the way, we'll discuss this on the after show, but I'll just lead in with this. And if you want to get the after show, you could become one of our Patreon readers. And you know, our Patreon, I love this plug. And our Patreon, it's such a low-key Patreon. So, you know, because we get that hey, you know, people are different. People are at different places financially. So if you want to throw into our Patreon, great. If you don't, that's fine too. It's not a requirement for this podcast, but I have forgiven Phaedra Parks, and I will tell you why in the after show.
I have done the same myself, and I love Candy. I love Candy. I love her. I love her and her. I love Mama Joyce. Todd is Todd. But yes, we will talk about that in the after show.
And before we move on, I'll leave it with this. The Ultimate Girls Trip has done the ultimate service as far as rehabbing housewives images. It is the ultimate housewife image rehab, the ultimate girl.
I thought better of Teresa Giudice after watching that. And I'm going to be honest, everyone, I will say this for Patreon because I've got some tea to drop about Ultimate Girls Trip, Dubai, Phaedra, and Porsha, and all that things that I will say for the after show if you guys would like to listen. And feel free to, I'll plug Les right here for that. But I did not like Ultimate Girls Trip season 1. I liked parts of it.
What?
I liked parts of it.
Andrew!
I liked parts of it. I watched it. Andrew. I watched 3/4 of it. I watched the 3/4 of the beginning episodes. I watched the Ramona and Kenya boat fight. But then after that, I was just kind of like, I'm done. And I watched the final episode as they were all going home. But Ultimate Girls Trip season 2, I loved every single second of it. Oh my goodness. And yes, I'll leave it at that.
I loved Ultimate Girls Trip 1. But anyway, but that's why we're friends, because that's differences of opinion makes it for it interesting. Now I can't wait for the after show. Because it sounds like we're gonna have a discussion.
We will have a discussion. Because can I tell you, I believe this. I like my housewives drag and ridden hard and close to financial ruin. And that's why I love Ultimate Girls Trip season 2. Those women have nothing to lose and everything to gain and will stab a bitch.
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because that's something else that I said to Dave Quinn, name drop number 2. That's what I was saying to Dave, is like, I was like, so Girls Trip 1, other than Cynthia, they were all OGs. They all still had their jobs on the show. And so this was kind of a little extra fun for them. Girls Trip 2, they had something to prove.
It's something to prove. The only people in Ultimate Girls Trip that season 1 that were like, they were on the edge was Luann and Ramona, because at that point Rahoney was slated to be finished, or they were not thinking that they were going to be part of the new Rahoney. Right. Not what they're doing right now with the Legacy and Sonia and Lou spinoff, which I'll save my thoughts for the after show on that. Right. This after show is going to be everywhere. I can tell you that right now.
I know, right?
But yeah, so besides those two women, and I didn't even I hated Ramona on Ultimate Girls Trip. My goodness. She was 10 times worse.
And I tell you this, and this is a good segue, Ultimate Girls Trip 3, when they first gave the list of the housewives, all of the housewives, I actually liked them. I actually like them on their own, but I was like, oh, as a group, I'm not excited about this one, because it just didn't sound like a dynamic group, even though, like I said, all of the housewives, because who's it, like Heather Gay, Whitney, Giselle, Leah. I don't like Leah after she fucked Ebony over, but who else? It was Giselle, who I like,
Adriana, wait, not Adriana, Marisol, Adriana. Wait.
Adriana and Marisol. So on their own, other than Leah, I liked them. Oh, Tinsley.
Tinsley got dropped in favor for Porsha, was it? Or
right, and so that was my segue. I was not excited about it until I found out that Porsha was joining the cast, and now I was like, okay, Porsha's in it. Now we've got a show.
Exactly. Also, for me, I'm going to be honest, just my last segue on Ultimate Girls Trip season 3, I would have much rather saw Tinsley freaking Mortimer in Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip than Leah McSweeney. I will save my thought.
Oh no, I like Tinsley.
That racist Republican bitch. I hate her so much. And it's not that she's a Republican. Let me just say that right now. If you're a Republican, I don't care. That's you. It's your opinion. You know what? I have to love and accept every single person on this earth. But Leah hid and stole from the Black community and hid her Republicanness to sell her streetwear clothing brand. That is why I hate you, because you are a weak ass little piece of shit who hid your true self. That is why I hate you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. But yeah, you know, and so no, and I was disappointed that Tinsley wasn't doing it anymore, because I did want to see Tinsley again on my screen. Yeah. But at the same time, I was happy because I'm like, okay, Porsha's there, and we all know that Porsha's gonna bring it.
Porsha is gonna drag someone. She's gonna become best friends. I can see it right now. Her, Heather, and Whitney are gonna become like a three little trio. I can tell you that right now. Mm-hmm. They're gonna be like that, because also Porsha, again, she's a very smart businesswoman. We've been over this, you know. She sees how she can stay relevant. It's very much in like a Martha Stewart way, if that makes sense. Right. You know, It's very like, okay, what can I do to reinvent myself? And she sees that Heather Gay she is the it girl in the housewives world right now. Everyone on Salt Lake City is right now. There's not a single housewife that I think, oh my goodness, you know, there's, you know, Heather's the it girl in the housewives world. She's being featured with Rihanna. She's doing this, she's doing that, you know.
Oh, she did something with Rihanna? Really?
Yeah, Rihanna DM'd her. Rihanna posted about it, how much she loves Salt Lake City. She loves Heather. Yeah.
I love that Rihanna is like a total fangirl for housewives, because isn't she DM Dorinda too?
Yeah, she DMs them. She was like, I want to stay at Bluestone. She even posted about Bluestone Manor on her Instagram one day. She's like, I want to stay here. And she was just like, Rihanna doesn't post that much. She's not like, you know, she's not like your mom, you know, on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
So let's start. Okay, so I only read the introduction and half of chapter 1. Actually, I'm not even reading it. I'm listening to it on Audible. And Porsha is doing
Did she do her audiobook?
Yeah, Porsha did her own audiobook.
One thing that I liked in the book that she addressed her growth of intelligence, which I liked in the book. She said she sat down and educated herself, and she saw the way she kind of behaved in her first 2 seasons of Housewives, and she was like, I don't want the world to perceive me like this, you know? Sat down.
Think about it, Andrew. Her grandfather was a civil rights pioneer.
Yes.
She thought that the Underground
Railroad was a real train.
She thought it was a train.
This is a confession I have to make. This is how I got into Housewives. My mom watched Housewives, and then I would, like years ago when she was pregnant with me and all that stuff and all those things, and she would be like, you know, and then when I first started it, because she had bought some of them and I would see it in our history, and I would be like, what is this? Can I watch it? She's like, no, you cannot watch that trash. And then she loved Real Housewives of Atlanta, was her favorite. And I remember on YouTube one time, and it was Porsha's funniest moments. And that's how I got started with the Housewives. And it was Porsha basically saying 265 days a year, you know, it's a real issue. It's not just about feeding the homeless at 265 days a year. And what do you mean it's not a train? And I was dead. I was dead. Or when she compared Chinatown to Tokyo, it was.
Okay, Andrew, do you know why I'm dead right now?
Why?
You said something and I am dead because I feel ancient. My mother was watching Housewives when she was pregnant with me.
To be fair, it was the first season of Orange County, and it was
Andrew,
different.
I still feel ancient.
Yeah.
I still feel ancient, Andrew. That was funny.
Yeah.
So Porsha starts out saying some of the names have been changed in the book and others have been completely taken out. So I'm like, so is this just the foreshadowing of the tea that she's spilling? If she's had to change names and edit names out, you know, is this going to be like a tea? You know, because some of these Housewives books, a lot of the Housewives books, they don't like the tea that dropped is kind of meh. Like Garcelle dropped some amazing tea.
Yeah.
You know, especially like with the Bill Cosby stuff that like nobody had any idea. And just, you know, Garcelle dropped some good tea. You know, there's been some other books that have dropped good tea. House of Hilton, which is actually technically not a Housewives book, but since it talks about the Richard sisters, I consider it a Housewives book, is like, you know, one big nuclear tea bomb. So I'm wondering if Porsha's going to drop some good tea here too. She's changing name.
You brought up such a good point. Okay, some of these Housewives books are literally some of the worst things I have literally ever read. I.e. Erica Jane's book. Like
awful,
that
awful book. Awful, Erica Jane's book.
Awful book. I have read every single one of the earlier Housewives books. I haven't read all the new wave Housewives books. Like I haven't gotten to them, but I have read like Class with the Countess, The Widow's Guide to Sex and Dating, like all of like the Leggy Blonde memoir by Riva Dresser, like those books. And I would just have to say, there's a reason if you go to a free books table today at any point in time, you will see a copy of the Leggy. And this has to be in like a housewife city, if you know what I mean, like cities that watch the Housewives and love the Housewives. You will see a copy of that Leggy Blonde book on there, and let me do you the favor. Throw it in the recycling bin. It will do better as a piece of recycled paper or whatever you can. It will do better as a fork than it would as reading material.
Well, Andrew, the whole reason this podcast started, the origin story of this podcast is I was touring, doing a show. I went to one of the venues, not for my show, but a friend of mine, his venue was, there was a theater, but there was a used bookstore in the front of the theater. And I found a copy of Denise Richards' book, her autobiography, for $1. And I read the book. And as I read the book, I would post on the Watch What Crappens Facebook page as just like a joke. And everybody kept on commenting, going, this should be a podcast, this should be a podcast, this should be a podcast. And that is how this turned into a podcast. And by the way, the Denise Richards book, Denise Richards dropped amazing tea in this book. Like really good tea.
And speaking of memoirs, and this is the only thing I will say, like, because it's not Porsha related, I guess, for a minute, but my favorite memoir out of all the books I've read was both of the Carol Radz-Love books. What Remains, one, if you don't go into it as like a juice tea gossip session, and you go to it as an actual freestanding book about her life and the experience that she lived, and how her life, to me, in my opinion, out of all the New York housewives, you know, we talk about Sonia Morgan being married to the Morgan. She was one of the few women who was actually like a real, I don't want to say celebrity, but she was
technically.
She was one of those New York women who, you know, you just read about and you're like, oh my goodness, I wish I had her life, right. You know? And I also read The Widow's Guide to Sex and Dating, and that book, she drops a lot of tea about like her relationships, the time she had sex with George Clooney, like that kind of stuff, which was like, if you like celebrities like from the 90s and New York, like life and that kind of time period, you'll really like The Widow's Guide to Sex and Dating. But that's where I stand on that one.
Oh, and then one more book that's technically not a Housewives book, but it is the Mama D book. Mama D's book was good because this was written before Deandra was a housewife. And basically Mama D was the famous one because, you know, she had her vitamins and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But Mama D dropped the amazing tea that, you know, I'll just leave it at that. Mama D dropped some good tea. And you can, and by the way, if you're a new listener, you can go back and listen to back episodes because I talk about the House of Hilton on this podcast. I talk about Mama D's book on this podcast. I talk about Denise Richards' book on this podcast. So go back and listen to earlier episodes because I talk about it.
Speaking of Mama D's, when we on our Patreon exclusive, I just thought of this. I want you to list all characters of Bravo Ultimate Girls Trip. All characters. No one is off limits. Friends, moms. We are going to do that on that. I'm going to make sure we do that. But yes, now back to Porsha for a second. Also in the book, this was written about in between. She's not been officially married yet to Simon Gubaldi. I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Is it? I didn't know how you pronounce it.
It's Gubaldi. Yeah. Okay. But she was engaged, and she did talk a little bit about that in the book, which I thought was interesting. And she doesn't talk about what she did to she does talk a little bit about what she did to her former friend. What was her name? Fallon Gubaldi.
Fallon. I'm not at that part yet.
Very end.
I'm not at that part of the book yet. I literally just read the introduction and half of chapter 1, but this podcast is turning out pretty good anyway. This episode's turning out pretty good anyway, if I might say so myself. So one of the things that I didn't get to yet, but she talked about it in the introduction, is she mentioned that she was homeless while she was on the show.
Yes, I remember that. And I also think that and
I'm looking forward to reading and finding out more about that. So, because I just found that stuck out to me. That I was like, oh, wow.
I think back to her time on the show, and again, she really did go through it. I mean, she went through it.
Right. So the only part that I really got to, this is a trope I'm sick of hearing. Housewives. Okay, I have an announcement. Housewives who are writing housewives book. Actresses who are writing books about themselves. Housewives and actresses who are doing interviews. I'm sick of fucking hearing that you were a tomboy when you were a kid. Yeah. I'm tired of that trope. I'm tired of it. Stop it, please.
The only time I want to hear it is when I have a heterosexual man say that I was bullied for wanting to wear a skirt to school. That is the only time I want to hear it. And then not all of it. But that is the only time I want to hear anything about your childhood and how you were bullied for being different. Only time I want to hear it.
I swear to you, every housewife, every actress starts out, I was a tomboy and would play with my brother. No, you weren't a tom. You just played with your brother. You just did, you liked sports and you liked running around. I'm sick of the tomboy trope. I really am.
Yeah, at this point, no. I want to hear, what would be really interesting? I want to hear about actresses who played with American Girl dolls up until they were 21. That's what I want to hear.
Well, and I think that the whole, I have issues with the whole American Girl doll thing, but at the same time, at least it would be different.
It would be interesting. Were you sitting there having a tea party with your American Girl doll at the American Girl doll store and you were looking like a crazy person? That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear.
But one thing I did find interesting about Porsha is she talked about, in chapter 1, when we go to chapter 1, she talks about how when she was 12, she would set up a video recorder and pretend like she was a QVC person.
Okay, hasn't everyone done that, or am I just weird? I remember watching Joan Rivers on the television, and and if you know anything about me, Joan Rivers has to be my favorite woman of all time.
Oh, I love Joan Rivers too. I love her too.
I love Melissa Rivers. I love the entire family. In fact, I remember, I am so crazy. I made my mother buy the Joan and Melissa, the Joan and Melissa story that was self-produced. It was like a Lifetime movie.
I remember that. I watched it. I remember that.
I made her buy it on VHS, and I made her buy a VHS machine. I was 12, and I said, I want to watch this movie. The only way I can get it is on VHS. You need to buy me a VHS machine so I can watch it. And yeah.
And I have a good Joan Rivers story. So I have these friends. Remember the show Fashion Police? The show that she did right before she died? I had some friends who were writers on Fashion Police, and they would always just say how nice Joan Rivers was. And then remember that whole scandal where the writers were saying, like the writers were going to strike or something like that? They were working for her then, and they were some of the writers that were against them striking. And because they were saying that Joan was always so good to them and so nice to them. And one of my friends, they're a straight couple. So the female writer really loved Joan because she said that Joan, since my friend was a female comedian, was even extra supportive because she really wanted to see women succeed in this business. So that made me, I've always loved Joan Rivers, but that made me like her even more.
Joan Rivers, if you hear about her as a person, she was just genuinely the nicest, most sweetest, most uplifting woman. And also, when Fashion Police was on, it was first getting started. This was at the end of Chelsea Lately. And if you remember, Chelsea Lately, and the one reason I do not like Chelsea Handler, I think I don't like the whole Chelsea and Friends co-thing. I semi-like Heather McDonald. I think she's a caricature, and I think she would make a better housewife or a friend of a
Heather
housewife.
McDonald?
Yes.
Heather McDonald. Oh, Andrew. And wait, what? Okay.
She would be a housewife of Orange County. Tell me right now, she would not make a great housewife of Orange County, a friend of a housewife of Orange.
No, she wouldn't.
She would put it all out there on the line. She would throw major drama, wreak havoc, act as a tornado for one season and leave. Tell me that would not be great to watch.
It wouldn't.
Okay. But I didn't like that Chelsea Handler never gave Joan Rivers her flowers. She said, I don't like her. Yeah, she literally said, and that's my biggest regret. And I look back at her, I never respected the women in comedy that came before me, like Joan and Carol Burnett. And I hate, and that's one reason why I just can't stand Chelsea and some of those women who didn't thank Joan, because if you look at what Joan did, she was out there in the 50s on television in the 60s.
Oh, yeah. Isn't Mrs. Maisel basically Joan Rivers?
Yes, she is absolutely Joan Rivers, and I love Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but the only person who has ever formally accepted Joan's legacy on comedy was Rachel Brosnahan, the person who plays Midge Maisel. So The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is one of my favorite television shows. I love Amy Sherman Palladino. I actually know Amy Sherman Palladino, kind of, not personally, but I do. It's a weird story about how we know each other. She also did Gilmore Girls too.
By the way, listeners, I apologize for screaming. It was just, that hearing that anyone say that Heather McDonald should be a Real Housewife was just a shock to my system. So I apologize for blowing your eardrums out.
Oh my God. Maybe you have to put a little headphone in the morning. I think that she would make a great housewife. She's a terrible person. She literally sold out Chelsea Handler for photos of her in People magazine. So she
alleged. But anyway.
Oh my God.
Well, no, I'm just throwing out alleged just in case, just to cover our asses.
I know. Well, allegedly. Yeah. So, I mean, tell me that woman would sell her own mother down the river if that means that she would get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I'm sorry. Hell, if she would get a Chanel bag, I'm sorry. I'd love that. Yeah.
So how do you feel, by the way, speaking about Orange County, how do you feel about Tamra coming back?
Okay. Here's the thing. We got Tamra. We got Taylor Armstrong, and Alexis Bellino is in conversations with these women.
Oh, God damn it. Really?
No, Alexis Bellino has changed so much.
I
hate Alexis Bellino, but have you seen the interview she has done? She has become a completely different person ever since she has divorced him. Yes, Jesus Juggs. She's no longer Jesus Juggs. She's now married to like a person in liberal politics, and it's insane that it is. Like, this was the way she was supposed to go, and then she just went that way. It was insane. I can't believe it.
I am happy that Taylor is joining the cast.
Now,
I think that's good.
I think Taylor, I felt like would have always done better in Orange County. And again, you like to name drop. I'm about to name drop too. My good friend Dana Wilkie, Miss $25,000 sunglasses, originally came on as a friend of Taylor.
Oh, really? Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. And
Yeah.
because it was the same year that Brandy came on. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were friends. And it was really weird. And the relationship kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. But she's very happy for Taylor. She thinks that it's the right decision. And she was talking to me about Taylor, and it was just kind of like, in her relationship with Taylor. And she said, Taylor was always meant for more things than Russell could have imagined. And I always thought that was really sweet to say. My goodness. But yeah, look at that. I think Taylor, no, I wanted a camera on Vicky Gunvalson for the week that she found out that Taylor and Tamara were coming back, and for the time that she finds out that Alexis Bellino was coming back. And I want that to be on a 24-hour circuit as she's running around the house screaming into pillows. Do you remember that photo from the last reunion where she is in the changing room and she is like,
right.
No one can see my face, but it is that meme where she has the eyes of the devil and her mouth is open and she is so visibly angry because she knows it's the end. I want to see that.
And that, I have a feeling, I have a feeling that, we haven't seen the last of Eva. We haven't seen the last of Phaedra. I think that
we're going to talk about Phaedra in the after show.
Yeah,
I've got a lot to say.
I think that Real Housewives Girls Trip 2 really rehabbed a lot of their images.
Yeah.
I'm not, I think the show definitely did Eva a favor. It did Phaedra a favor. And obviously it did Taylor and Tamara favors too, because, I think Eva was a whole
different person.
Than she was more interesting on this show than the entire seasons. What was she on? 2 seasons, 3 seasons on Housewives?
Also, to bring it back to Porsha for a second, my favorite Porsha line of all time, not goodbye Ashy, not any of that. Them titties are social distancing at the season, was it 14 or 12?
I remember that at the reunion. The Zoom reunion.
I remember my mom. I remember I was watching with my mother, and because it was back when I was on Sherelle's World, and we were talking about it, and I had to watch it. And if you guys have ever met, if there are Bravo recasters or anyone who is in the Bravo world, and it is your job, and you get paid to talk about Bravo, then you know what I'm about to talk. And this is kind of like industry tea. You do not watch some episodes for enjoyment. You have to watch them because you have to, and you literally sit there to take notes. You have to, and then you also, like, for some housewives, for podcasters or tea droppers, like someone like me, we would have to have great memories, because we would not only have to remember that season, we would have to remember like 4 seasons ago what they said and how to bring it back. Like, I remember, I have to remember, like, when PK and Dorit had their robbery, I'd be like, oh my goodness, this is not actually the first time they have been robbed. Do you remember back of season 9, Lucy, Apple Juicy, first episode, she got robbed again. And think about all the robberies that happened that season, and they never found a convicted person. So this is more evident. And PK, you have to look at when loans were due and all this stuff. So if you have to watch those episodes, sometimes they're not really fun to watch. I remember watching that with my mother, who swore off Housewives at that point. And I had never seen a woman more engaged when Porsha and Candy and Nene were all going at each other. And she was like, who is this new bitch, Eva? And why is Porsha dragging her so hard? And I had to explain to her that. And that was an immense amount of joy.
You know what? I think we should move on to the after show, actually, just because I'm looking at my notes. And like I said, I only, that was as far as I had read in the book anyway. So if you are going to join us on the after show, that's on our Patreon. And like I said, if you want to become a member of Patreon, go to www.patreon.com, The Reality Reading Rainbow. If you want to do that, then we'll see you over there. If not, if you don't want to become a Patreon member, because that's not a requirement, because like I like to say, your presence is our present, then we will see you next week. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at The Reality Reading Rainbow, or you can find me on my website, leskirkendallbarrett.com. Andrew, is there anywhere the listeners can find you? Do you want to be found?
Yes, you can find me on Andrew's Lifestyle on YouTube. You can also find me at Andrew lifestyle _ RH on Instagram. I think that is correct. Let me double check. So sorry. It's Andrews _ lifestyle _ RH. There we go. That's you can find me on Instagram.
One more thing. If you are in, so I'm also an actor. And I'm also right now on tour with a show that I wrote called The Real Black Swan, Confessions of America's First Black Drag Queen. It is the story of William Dorsey Swan, who was a former slave who became the queen of drag in the late 1800s in Washington, D.C. I'm touring with that show. So I'm currently at the Minnesota Fringe Festival until August 14th, and you can find out information about that at fringefestival.org. Then the next stop in my tour is the Indianapolis, the Indie Fringe in Indianapolis. I will be doing that August 18th through the 28th, and you can find out information on that on indiefringe.com. And then after that, I am going to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I will be doing this show at the Halifax Fringe Festival, and that is September 1st through 11th. And you can Google Halifax Fringe, because I believe it's a .ca. You could Google that, and if you're in Canada, come say hello. Also, I have another podcast. If you're a fan of Lifetime and Hallmark movies, my co-hosts and I rip apart movies on both Lifetime and the Hallmark Channel every week, and you can catch that on a Lifetime of Hallmark. And Andrew, are you still doing your YouTube channel?
Yes, I'm still doing my YouTube channel. I'm still doing that. Also, Les, you need to have me on the Lifetime of Hallmark's podcast. I have not been, but I'm the biggest Hallmark fan in the world. And there's one movie, you gotta have me, we missed the Christmas in July specials, but there's one movie that changed my life on Hallmark. It was called A Crown for Christmas, and it changed my life, and they still play it because it's one of the Hallmark Heritage Classic movies. So that means they play it every single year. It's really incredible. It has that one actress from somewhere, and it's an interesting movie.
I'll have you on. Absolutely. Yes. You'd actually fit in well with my co-host and I. It's funny. Yeah, you'd have a good time. So Andrew, I will talk to you in a few seconds to do the Patreon.
Yes.
But everybody else, if you're not going to join us on Patreon, then I will see you next week. Keep reading. Bye.
Bye.